Hi, this is Violet again, and I'm gonna split this video in two because it's quite long. That's the time which I tell you my story and how I ended up with super strong anxiety and secondary depression and panic attacks. It started when I was really young. I was about to turn 18, and before that, my life was completely normal. I've had a normal childhood. Um, I was a normal teenager. I used to smoke cannabis quite a lot. I used to drink alcohol, and I sometimes used um, heavy drugs. Most of the times I was pushed by my ex-boyfriend, which wasn't the nicest person ever. He was 4 years older than me, and often he pushed me to use drugs because he made me feel like I wasn't good enough like the others because they had fun with drugs and things like that. So sometimes I used drugs just to please him in a certain way. And there is another thing. During that period, I had to take 2 times the morning after pill, and that's why I started using contraceptive pills. So I used to use drugs, and I used to have also the contraceptive pill on me. Basically, as I remember the date, it was the 26th of June, and on that day, he wanted us to have a trip. So he bought larger use of the drug that we used to take, which was MDMA, and I didn't feel comfortable. I was scared also because there was something that my friends at the time used to say, like, if you don't want to use the drug and you take it anyway, uh, it will make you feel like it will turn you into schizophrenic. It will, uh, I mean, some urban legends, stupid things, but I was really, really scared. But he was like, come on, we have to do it. You have to do it. I want to show you how it feels, things like that. So basically, we divided the dosage in three. And the first time I took it, it was fine. The second time, we mixed it with alcohol and it was fine. When I took the third part of the dosage, I had my first panic attack. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just a drug and I just had to wait for it to wean off, and it did. Then the drug kicked in, and it was a nice trip. I mean, uh, I think the normal trip you have with MDMA. After that, I had a normal week. I was just scared about what happened, but I thought I will never use heavy drugs again in my life. And I thought that was it. Uh, I remember the Saturday after, because we did it on Saturday. We were just smoking cannabis, and I was sitting on the stairs with some friends of mine, and then it started again, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was again the MDMA doing its effect, but it was a panic attack, and I didn't know, and I was terribly scared. I asked my boyfriend to bring me to the hospital, but he didn't want me to because he knew that if he went to the hospital, I would have said that we had drugs and we had MDMA, and I was 17, so I was underage, and he was scared he was going to go to jail because he gave a drug to an underage person. So basically, it was night, I think around 1 or 2 in the night, and I was crying all the time, saying that I was dying, and it lasted quite long, like something like 2 hours or more. Finally, he decided to bring me to the hospital, and no one told me what was going on. They just said to me that I was probably too much stressed, and my heartbeat was quite fast, and that's it. They sent me back home, and this kept happening basically every week when I used to go out. And then I went to a cardiologist. Then basically I started not to be myself anymore. I was too scared to go out. I was scared to go and see my friends. So I started isolating myself. I stopped the contraceptive pill because I thought it was that, but nothing happened. Then I went on a school trip during summer, and that's when I had my first asthmatic attack, and it was also a panic attack, but I didn't know that. I haven't heard before about anxiety or panic attacks. I just knew about depression, but I didn't know anything else about it. So I kept growing scared that I destroyed my brain with drugs and things like that, and I couldn't tell anyone. I started not to leave the house. I started feeling really depressed. I went to every kind of doctor, ENT, because of my breathing problems and things like that. Then I developed a sort of constant shallow breath. I went to bed every night scared that I was going to die, and I had no one to talk to. Then the anxiety increased and became generalized anxiety disorder, and the anxiety was so strong that I wasn't able to eat or sleep, or basically I just wanted to die because I couldn't bear the pain, and I thought that my life was over, basically, that I couldn't be again normal. That was when my mom decided to bring me to a doctor. It was a family friend, and it was one of the biggest mistakes that she made. First of all, because she did it when it was slightly too late. And then this person said he didn't want to be paid for treating me. He kept prescribing me drugs on a lower dosage. I was feeling better, but I wasn't feeling myself. And that went on for a lot of months, and basically I started feeling really uneasy going to see this person because he was I was just 18, he was 60, and he started making comments, and he used to touch my butt and do things like that, which were really inappropriate, but I didn't know who to turn to, if it makes sense. And also, he didn't want me to go and see a therapist or anyone else. He wanted to have a special, that's how he called it, relationship with me. So I knew he was harassing me, and when I used to go there with my mom, he used to be really rude and cruel. And basically, I remember the day when I stopped going see him. I had a relapse because I tried to smoke cannabis, and I had a panic attack. And he said, "There's nothing we can do. You need to be hospitalized." Then he put me on anti-anxiety medication again, and another antidepressant. I was able to wean off the anti-anxiety medication, and even if that antidepressant wasn't the right one for me, was the Wellbutrin, I think it's the name, and I don't think it's really used for anxiety. I think it's more used for depression because it acts just on the noradrenaline, not on the serotonin. And basically, the last time I went to see him to tell him that I still wasn't feeling good and things like that, he told me, well, if you still want to be treated and helped by me, you have to give me at least 3 blowjobs. That was the day in which I understood that it wasn't just in my mind, but it was really harassing me. So I stopped seeing him. I decided to go through to a therapist. I started doing my CBT, and on my own, I told him, to the psychiatrist on the phone, and I told him I want to go back to paroxetine, which was one of the medication that he prescribed me, and was one that was working for me. And I decided on my own that I wanted to stay on 40 milligrams of paroxetine. Since I started with the paroxetine and with the CBT, things started slowly to get better. And I can say that by October, it was in June that I started this kind of treatment. Was something like 80% in remission. I was able again to travel on my own. I started at university, and but lots of other stuff. Oh, I forgot to tell that since I was a child, I've been doing performance, acting, dancing, and singing, because what I wanted to do was to be a performer in musical theatre. So basically, during that period, I started again to do my musical theatre things, attend the art school, playwriting, and things like that, doing my own shows. So everything was pretty normal. And I stopped using drugs completely. I just kept on drinking alcohol, but just a social drinker. I wasn't drinking alcohol on my own, so basically only in the weekend when I used to go out. Problems started again when my mom forced me to reduce the paroxetine. The first time I reduced it, I had small withdrawal symptoms and a peak in my anxiety, but it just lasted for 1 week. Then I reduced it again, and when I reached 20 milligrams, I had a bad relapse with a kind of panic attacks, but with also strong depressive symptoms. But they were just attacks. It wasn't like long-standing depression. Again, we made a mistake, and we thought that it was just a matter of time, and everything eventually would have gone fine. Things kept going worse. I kept having these attacks, and again I started to be agoraphobic. Even if I was able to go on with my life, with university, having friends, social life, but it wasn't the same thing. Then reached a point in which I was starting to feel too bad. I was too scared to do everything. So we went again to another psychiatrist. This time it was a woman, because we were scared of sexual harassment again. And basically this person was the person that ruined my life. At first, she told me to switch the paroxetine to venlafaxine, and I started feeling slightly better after a short period, but it wasn't enough. So what I expected her to do was to increase my venlafaxine. Instead, she decided to switch me back to paroxetine, 40 milligrams again, but it wasn't doing the same effect that used to do during the period in which I had my remission, which I can say was like, before having my relapse, it was something like 95% remission. I was almost normal. The only thing I couldn't do was to use cannabis, but I mean, it was a small price to pay. I didn't mind. And after that, I went again to see her, and basically this woman told me that we had to add a medication, like do an augmentation, and I trusted her. She prescribed me a medication called Limbitrol, and I wasn't feeling much better after that. I also had some side effect, like sometimes I had restless leg syndrome during the night, and other small side effects. But I felt slightly better. I was able to have 60%, let's say, normal life. I wasn't having anxiety. The attacks were less strong and less frequent. I still had much phobias and avoidances, like I wasn't able to travel on my own. and I had to decline many job offers in terms of audition far away from where I lived. I wanted to move to attend an academy of musical theatre, but I couldn't do it. But at the same time, despite the attacks and the anxiety that was still there, I was able to get 3 degrees, do my own shows, work as a professional actress, work as a secretary to get some money, and teach acting to kids and things like that. So even if I wasn't feeling extremely good or even good, I mean, I was able to have also a social life, have friends, and I have to say that I was lucky enough to find a person that loved me despite everything. This person is still now with me, and in terms of friends, family, and love life, I was really, really lucky. And basically, for 6 years, I used this kind of medication. And when I used to tell the psychiatrist that I still had my problems, she used to say, "There's nothing we can do. That's the way you have to live." So I went on with that, and I accepted it. Then I was finally strong enough to move with my boyfriend. I was accepted in drama school, and we decided to move basically. And after 3 months that I moved, this person told me that it was time to reduce the Limbitrol. And 10 days after I reduced my, I was almost forgetting the funniest part. Basically, the Limbitrol was in a capsule, so she told me to open the capsule, divide in 4 parts what was in the capsule, and take off 1/4 of what was in the capsule, and take the rest, and then continue the reduction in this way. 10 days after that, I was back home because it was Christmas. I had the worst relapse ever. My anxiety went up to the roof. The only thing I could say was asking my parents to kill me because I didn't know how to bear the pain. And that was when we found out that the Limbitrol was basically a mix of amitriptyline, which is another antidepressant. So I was taking 2 antidepressants, and chlordiazepoxide, which is a benzodiazepine. So I had been taking for 6 years without knowing a benzodiazepine, and I was feeling terrible, and this person basically bombarded me with medication. She gave me 3 milligrams of lorazepam. She tripled the dosage of Limbitrol, and gave me olanzapine, which I think is an antipsychotic or things like that. And I was able to go back to the city where I live right now and do the course, but I knew that I had to reduce the medications, even if this bitch told me that I could have lived with all those pills for the rest of my life. I didn't have any particular side effect apart the fact that I was a little bit drowsy, and I used to fall asleep like at 9, which wasn't something like me. I've always been the kind of person that goes to sleep really late. So that's the end of the first part, and I'll see you back in a bit for the second part.